I am not worried that it's going to be basically compromise his season. He may probably start a few weeks later the season, but it will not have any impact, not for the classics and not for the tour.
Everybody, welcome back to The Move Plus, our new weekly off-season show. I'm Spencer Martin. I'm here with Johan Bruyneel. We are discussing a few topics of the week. This week, we will get into Remco Evenepoel's crash and how that affects his 2025 goals, as well as the never-ending Tom Pidcock saga, the international nightmare we're all living through, where we just want this man to sign a contract with the team, but he's officially leaving Ineos. We don't know where he's going. We will get Johan's thoughts on where that is. But first, Johan, before we get into the episode, we want to talk about our title sponsor for the week, which is Zwift. Zwift just released their Jeopardize, an all-new smart bike that is changing the indoor game and making it easier and more affordable than ever to get started riding indoors. You may know that it's hard to ride indoors. Not a lot of people like it, but Zwift has changed that for all of us, and now we can really crank out the miles inside during the winter. And with the Zwift ride, it like takes the experience of Zwift up to 100. It multiplies how great the product already is. And the bike is ultra quiet and super easy to set up. So you just need one tool, the frame key, to build it all out and make any adjustments to saddle height, bar height, and reach, which means a bunch of people in the same house can ride the same bike. And it's easy to switch all the measurements. And once you're done with the frame key, it slots right back into the magnetic holder in the frame, so you never lose it. The ultra quiet part, also sneaky important, because if you live in a smallish house or just a normal size house, no one wants to hear your loud trainer sessions. So that's a reason to get it right there. You're asking, this must be a ton of money. This sounds like a great product. Well, it's only $1,299.99. That's $1,200 to $1,299. It's a game changer. So head to Zwift.com to check it out. And once you buy it, you can join our We Do rides on Zwift, our We Do Wednesdays and Suffer Sundays, which are running right now. Johan, have you been hitting up some of these We Do Wednesdays? I've been delinquent, but I think you've been on there with the Zwift ride.
Yeah, I did the We Do Wednesday last week. This week I couldn't. And I actually started on the Zwift ride for the first time, as I said in our earlier podcast. Yesterday, my son used the Zwift ride for the first time. So we are using the same bike in this house. Adjustability is key, just a little tweak. You can raise the seat. You can change the stem length easily. And he actually was super excited. He says he feels a big difference compared to the normal setup, which is the bike on a smart trainer. He did a great session yesterday. So we're loving it. We're loving it in the house here.
Yeah. And I mean, the adjustability, we can't go on enough about that. That's key. And it's not overly complicated. It's not one of these, I've been looking at a piece of indoor equipment that is extremely heavy. So the fact that it's just a light, simple product, I could not endorse that enough. But Johan, our first topic of the day, Remco Evenepoel riding in Belgium, I believe, from his home, ? Hit a postal. This is actually freaky for anyone that rides a bike. I think about it all the time. I think a postal van opened his door and opened their door. And then Remco was, let's say he was in the bike lane. Sometimes like a door will go out into a bike lane, hits the door and fractured his hand, shoulder blade, and some ribs, and then had surgery immediately because his shoulder was dislocated. I think you have to fix the ligaments. If you don't do it, you can have complications later. He's out for the short term. Patrick Lefevre was kind of non-committal on how long he's going to be out, his team manager. I heard potentially until February, but that's the maximum window. I would guess he's back before then. Have you heard anything about this, Johan?
Well, I only know what I've been reading, and especially I've been searching a little bit through the Belgian media. So, we talked about security and safety on last week's show in races, but if you look at cycling, the biggest risks are actually when a cyclist is training. You're on the road amongst traffic. Remco was, I would guess, he wasn't doing any specific intensity or efforts. He was just riding in Belgium for the people who, I mean, there's a lot of people who think, okay, Belgium and Holland, it's all bike lanes. It's not all bike lanes, yeah. So there's also dangerous roads where it's risky and tricky. This must have been one of those situations. I would guess he wasn't going very fast because it was in a little village or a little city. But unfortunately, he was riding, probably passing a postcard that was stopped to deliver the mail, and the driver opened the door and he hit the door. The first news, of course, is always alarming, right? You see, okay, Remco, and then you saw the pictures. His bike was broken in two, and there was a piece of carbon missing in the top tube. That looks all spectacular. But I would say, given the circumstances, I think the injuries are, of course, it's always bad. It's not good if you crash and you break bones. But given the circumstances, I think he may consider himself lucky that there are no severe injuries. When I say severe injuries, complicated fractures, right? So as far as I understand, the shoulder blade and the rib and the hand don't require surgery. So that means that it's a clean break or a fracture. And that the collarbone required some intervention to put it back into place. I don't expect it to be a big negative consequence in the long term, but of course it will derail his preparation for the season. He was actually just back now because we've seen on his social media that he was in the US, did a visit at Specialized and did some tests in the wind tunnel. Then he just got back. He went to Qatar, I think, or to Dubai. I don't remember, for the Formula One race. Just got back. So he started to ride his bike again, basically to get back into the rhythm and start training progressively. So he will have to delay that for a bit. I am not worried that it's going to be basically compromise his season. He may probably start a few weeks later the season. But it will not have any impact, not for the classics and not for the tour. That's my prognostic. Of course, I'm just going off what I've been reading, right? I haven't seen any medical reports but usually these guys, it's amazing, Spencer, how fast these guys recover. If it's not a complicated fracture break that requires surgery with pins and plates and especially the shoulder. I mean, let's not forget, Remco Evenepoel last year, this season, in the month of April, was involved in the crash in the Basque Country and broke his shoulder blade and his collarbone and had surgery. And look where he was in the Tour de France. He was third and he was on a really good level. So, working back from that, it's the beginning of December now. So he can take December as a recovery month and then just basically crank it up. But I expect him to be at least on a static bike on Zwift within the next 2 or 3 weeks. That's my guess. He's probably not going to publish it, but these guys are amazing in terms of recovering fast. And, they're special people. They have a strong will, and as soon as he can turn his legs, he's allowed to turn his legs. Even if he has to sit up, he's going to be on the home trainer. So all things considered, I think it's better that it happens now than later on. And I'm quite confident that he's going to be, as soon as his classics start, like Liège-Bastogne-Liège and Flèche Wallonne, that he's going to be okay.
So if we assume that he's back on the bike, let's just say next Monday, this Monday, it really doesn't. I guess you're okay. Let's say 12. I wouldn't be shocked. Like some of these guys, if he had surgery early in the week, like some of these guys are on the bike crazy fast. But let's say December 16th. Yeah, probably doesn't affect the season at all, right? Like just a little break, and then
he will be limited in terms of what he can do, because I saw that he came back from the Formula One and he went straight away on a beach training with some teammates. All that stuff he won't be able to do in the off season. Basically, riding your bike and also have some fun.
Yeah.
You will have to be more focused on rehab, but it will not, I don't think it will impact his performance for next year. You always have to try to see a silver lining somewhere, and sometimes these kind of incidents have their, I'm going to say benefits, but their positive sides is that he doesn't have to worry now to get ready for the season no matter what. He has time. He can build towards, because these guys want to, as soon as they want to race, they want to perform. Normally, Remco starts in the Tour of Algarve usually, and straight away he wants to win. But that's obviously not going to be an objective now. He may be able to race the Tour of Algarve, but it should not be an objective to win. So it's his mindset that needs to change a bit. But as soon as we're talking about April and July, I'm not worried for Remco at all.
But my big takeaway from this is, does he live in Belgium full time?
No.
Like in the suburbs of Brussels?
No. No, it's not. It's not even Brussels. It's before Brussels. But you can train there perfectly. And I think he was basically using it to visit some family. He does live in Belgium, but he also has a house in the south of Spain. And so in the winter period, in the off season, normally he's gonna spend more time there. That's going to change now. So he's definitely not going to go earlier he's not going to go to Spain, because he will focus. I have a pretty good idea of where he will go for his rehab. He has been there already. Let's not forget that the guy, a part of the crash in the Basque Country, he had this horror crash in Tour of Lombardy a few years ago, and had to come back from really far. And so he's going to focus on that rehab now. He has a good contact there in Belgium, and he will spend a lot of time there. It's a guy he trusts, and a guy who has brought him back already, basically from the bottom. So he will definitely spend a lot of time there to get strong again and to recover.
And do you think he's still going to target the Giro Tour? Have we heard any more on that?
Obviously, that changes now, right? The first focus is now try to recover, and if you try to recover, Spencer, a good advice is always don't forget about your goals, your sport goals. Don't try to focus, and say, I have to because I have to be ready for this. Take your time. I had never heard any confirmation about the Giro and Tour. By the way, the Giro, do we even know?
Yeah, I was going to say they have to have a route first before they can.
We don't know where it starts yet, if it's in Italy or if it's in Albania.
I mean,
the plan initially was that it's in Albania, so that I've now seen that they're gonna announce the Giro on the 13th of January. So I guess it was planned to be Albania for quite a lot of money, I guess, and then finally I think that there's some trouble there, and they're looking at other options, still trying to get to Albania, but anyway, for Remco, I think that's secondary now, unless the Giro is already pushing with a good contract for him to participate. Then, of course, that would be another thing. But hey, you could also see it in his case, for example. If he starts a bit slower in the season, he could use the Giro to get a lot of kilometers in and good intensity in to be ready for the Tour.
I also would think so. Albania was supposed to pay 7 million euros to have the Giro. There's all these reasons that potentially they're backing out. I kind of wonder if they're like, hey, that's a lot of money. Maybe we shouldn't do that. But if they don't have it in Albania, I don't know if Remco's getting that start fee. So that could be part of the reason that we haven't heard any confirmation on him showing up. I cannot imagine he would show up without a start fee, right?
Probably not, especially now that it's common knowledge that the Giro has been paying cycling superstars to participate, on the contrary to the Vuelta and the Tour. I'm going to guess that if it's interesting enough, then Remco would go. I'm not sure, Spencer, even if they don't get the money from Albania, RCS have deep pockets, and I've seen the numbers lately. It's a really good business. They make good money. They make a lot of money.
Interesting. You think probably not so much on their publishing, but do you like the races turn a nice profit for them?
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Oh, that's interesting. I wouldn't have thought that, but now you mention, I guess they are just kind of quietly. They do have quite a bit of races, and they're all pretty big races, and they probably get good money from all those towns. Is it weird too? Did you hear about this? The Vuelta is starting in Italy next year. Is it? How does RCS feel about that? Like, first you have the Tour coming in, now you have the Vuelta, and every euro they pay for those start finishes. Or it was like €1 they're not paying RCS for start finishes. I cannot imagine they're happy about that.
Yeah, well, it's in Turin, no? That it starts.
Yeah, it's in, which is where I feel like, weren't we just there for the Giro this last year? Didn't it start in Torino?
Turin, I've seen somewhere that Turin will have had the start now of all the pre-Grand Tours after the Vuelta, because the Tour started there also.
Yes, yeah. It feels like a lot of money for that region to be paying.
Listen, I mean, it must be worth it. But yeah. Anyway, going back to Remco, of course, in Belgium, it was a big shock. First reports are always a bit more drastic, but yeah, and I also saw that. You know how it goes with social media nowadays. It was an employee of the post office, and apparently it was a woman, and she was in big shock. There was a statement from the Belgian post office saying that they were so sorry and that they would cooperate, and Remco and his parents actually made a very nice statement, and they offered their assistance and their help to help the person who caused the accident, basically, because it was an accident. It was definitely not on purpose. And so I think that was really nice, because he could have jumped on the bandwagon and said, hey, this driver didn't pay attention. They opened their door and now I'm here. And on the contrary, he expressed his sympathies and offered their full support. So, it can happen. Accidents do happen. And unfortunately, the biggest risk and the biggest danger for cyclists and professional cyclists is when they're out training, because then there's a lot of factors that they don't control, and they're amongst traffic. And when they're in the bike race, they're all they all have the same purpose, they all have the same skills, and they know what they're going to do. If you have to navigate the traffic, it's a lot more dangerous.
Yeah, and presumably, hopefully, it's a closed course when you're racing, except Max Schachmann, who got hit by a car at Lombardy and broke his collarbone. But usually it's a closed course, which is much safer. No, it's super freaky because he potentially didn't even see a car moving. You just see all these cars parked and you hope that they're not going to open their door. And even if you're not going super fast, you could not have enough time to react. Yeah. I hope that it doesn't affect. I don't know. I guess we don't know. We're not him, but I do think there's a chance that he just he might have to not win small Southern Portuguese and Spanish races in 2025. But the goals past that are probably going to be on track if everything goes well.
I think
next piece of news. Well, let's take a quick break to talk about one of our sponsors, and then we'll get into our next piece of news. Tom Pidcock, if you can just try to tidy this up for us, Johan. I feel like we've been talking about forever, but we'll be right back. Everybody, this episode is brought to you by Helix Sleep. Helix offers 20 unique mattresses, including their award-winning Luxe and Ultra Premium Elite collections, the Helix Plus, which is a mattress designed for big and tall sleepers, and the Helix Kids mattress designed for growing bodies and endorsed by child sleep experts. If you have kids, you know that your kids sleeping means you're sleeping well. So that's definitely something worth investing in. I just got a Helix sleep mattress myself, and I am absolutely loving it. And the best part, other than it being a great product, is that picking out your mattress is so easy. All you have to do is go to the Helix website, take the Helix sleep quiz, and you can find a perfect mattress for you in under 2 minutes. And your personalized mattress is shipped straight to your door, free of charge. It comes in a very easy to handle box. You just take the mattress out. It expands itself into a mattress form, and you just put it where it needs to be, hopefully where you're sleeping. And Helix knows there's no better way to test out a new mattress than by sleeping on it in your own home. That's why they offer a 100-night trial and a 10-year warranty, as if anything goes wrong, you're covered. And they offer models with memory foam layers to provide optimal pressure relief if you sleep on your side, models with more responsible foam to cradle your body for essential support in stomach and back sleeping positions, plus enhanced cooling features to keep you from overheating at night. That one is extremely important to me. I'm always hot when I'm sleeping. So that is what I'm loving the most. Helix is offering 25% off all mattress orders for our listeners. So go to helixsleep.com/themove. That's helixsleep.com/themove. This is their best offer yet, and it won't last long. With Helix, better sleep starts now. All right, Johan. So we heard that, I guess if we should back up. A few weeks ago, Tom Pidcock was rumored to be leaving Ineos, and then he's at the team camp. And then I actually can't remember. Did they come out with a statement? Did they say anything about him staying, or was it just presumed because he was at camp? I will say, as soon as I saw him at Ruler Live and I saw the team of 3 Ineos employees there to watch him, babysit him, and then he basically said he's still unhappy with the team, it seemed like he could not race for them, that the relationship was damaged beyond repair. So from then, I was expecting him to leave, but it's been announced now that he has officially left the team. His contract is no more. And then now the question is, where is he going?
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's back up to the day before, the 2 days before the Tour of Lombardy, Spencer, when we talked about him being deselected from the team and no apparent reason was given. Apparently, he was on his way to the team hotel. He just finished second, I think, was it Giro d'Emilia that Pogačar won? He was second there. Was going to definitely be the leader of Ineos for the Tour of Lombardy. And then all of a sudden, sorry, Bom, you're not racing. I think we said then, both you and I, that it was unimaginable that after this happened, that Pidcock would be able to stay or race for Ineos.
Yeah.
This season. Even if there has been signs that, he went to the team camp, in my opinion, what happened was that, let's not forget, Pidcock, I think he knows already from that moment that he was not allowed to race Lombardy. I'm out of here. There's no way I'm racing for these guys. But he's a professional cyclist with a contract who earns a lot of money and wants to have his monthly check. So what I would think what happened is he just went to the team camp because it's his contractual obligation. So they didn't have any reason to say, okay, now you're done. Now we fire you. What's clear here that happened is that we've known for a while now that Ineos wants to cut costs. Radcliffe wants to spend less money and try either rebuild or basically shut down the team or sell the team, whatever, in the future. And Pidcock was a big burden in the budget. Pidcock has known, in my opinion, since that moment, if not before, that he didn't want to race for Ineos anymore. But he had to play the game because in order for Pidcock to keep his high salary, Ineos needed to come to an agreement with Pidcock and pay part of that salary, even if he's not on the team anymore. I think that was the reason why, because he just went and said, hey, at least I'm not going to give them any reason to terminate my contract. And then I'm basically at the mercy of any other team who has a certain budget left, but it's not going to be the budget that I've signed for, that my contract is in Ineos. So it was just a contractual, how they say that, acte de présence, like he just showed up because his contract obliged him to show up.
Yeah, that still takes me back to I cannot understand this Lombardia decision because, as you say, as soon as that happened, as soon as they pulled him, we all knew he could no longer race for the team. But the thing is, you know who else knows that? Everybody else. So it's a little complicated to explain this, but I've seen a lot of confusion where people are saying, oh, Ineos doesn't want to let Tom Pidcock go. They should just let him go. It's like, well, that's not true. Ineos and Tom Pidcock want Tom Pidcock to go. Like, they're both in agreement on that. The only sticking point is, how much are we going to have to pay for you not to be on the team? So that's why this is taking a long time, because if he's making £5 million a year, let's say Q36.5 isn't going to pay him that much. They're going to pay him some amount of it, and then Ineos has to make up the difference. He does not want his contract terminated. As you said, that's why he's checking the boxes and not letting them terminate the contract. The contract is gold. You know, it goes through 2027 for a lot of money every year. He's probably never going to sign another contract that big. He does not want that thing canceled. Ineos wants him gone. He wants to be gone. They just have to get a team to pay him the largest possible percentage of that amount, so that Ineos doesn't have to pay multiple millions of pounds to not have a rider on the team, if that makes sense. Because then they have to say, well, who can we sign to replace his output that is going to take us so we're not netting at zero? You know, they want to save money somehow, so they have to pay Tom not to be on the team, pay someone to be on the team, all for less than Tom's current salary. That's where this gets delicate. But Johan, that when they pulled him out of Lombardia, it just feels like they cut any leverage they had, because you cannot go back and race for that team after that's done. And it kind of hurt their ability to bluff, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, probably. I mean, I don't know. I really don't understand what the thinking behind that decision was for Lombardy. I can't understand it. But there must have been a reason, or there must have been a serious miscommunication at the top management. But it made no sense. It made no sense. It really put Ineos in a bad light. And everybody started to question, hey, do these guys know what they're doing? To me, it seems like they don't. I think at the lower level, everything that's closely related to the cycling team, they do. But it's above the people who really, the board of directors, or as they call it, and we went into detail about that in another podcast. There's not many people there that are close to cycling or understand the dynamics and the mentality of cycling. So it was a strange decision. And I agree, they may have lost some leverage. Finally, they had to let him go, and they had to pay. And so we've always said Pidcock is in a good position. If nobody wants him, he stays at Ineos, and they have the contractual obligation to pay him that much money. And at the same time, you also have to think, if you put yourself in the head of that cyclist, in this case Pidcock, do you really want to have all that money during those 3 remaining years and be in an environment that you don't like to be in? It's going to be a long 3 years.
Yeah.
So listen, good for him. Now the question is, and that's not been announced. Where is Pidcock going? Right. I will stay with my initial prediction that it's going to be Q36.5. Is it the Swiss-based pro team? I think it's a great move for them. They do have the resources, apparently, to get Pidcock on board. It's a big name. It can help them with wildcards, because they don't have an automatic wildcard, not for the Giro, not for the Tour, not for the Vuelta, and not for any of the World Tour Classics. Automatic wildcards, meaning like Lotto and Israel have, right?
Well, I think so. The one days have 3 auto wildcards.
They have more. I think they can go up to 25 teams.
But I think like the top 3 second division teams all automatically get invited to every one day, but top 2 for Grand Tours.
Yeah.
And they're not even close,
There's Tudor, who has obviously made a lot of changes to the team, and they're going to be in a priority position compared to Q36.5 in terms of wildcards for certain races. So I think Pidcock to the team would be a great thing, not just for the wildcards, but also for scoring points for the future to move up in the rankings and get one of those two spots in the pro team ranking. So it's not been confirmed. I think personally, I think the decision is made already, but at the same time, then you don't know what's happening now, because Red Bull could be an option. Pidcock already has a contract with Red Bull, at least for mountain biking and cyclocross. On the road, he didn't race with the Red Bull helmet, but in cyclocross and on mountain biking, yes. So there's that link there already. And then who knows? Now, we've talked about Astana, who's now has a Chinese funder with very deep pockets, a bike brand. Imagine all of a sudden these Chinese guys say, "Hey, we want Pidcock." It doesn't matter how much it costs. They could come in the last minute and write a big check for their bike brand, for the, what's it called, XDS Carbon. It would be amazing to have a rider like Pidcock on their bikes, right? And then at the same time, something is still not clear in my mind, because let's not forget, Q36.5, they're on, if I'm not mistaken, they're on Scott.
Yeah.
But the owner of Q36.5, the brand, also is the owner of Pinarello. So what will happen there? Will Pinarello move to Q36.5? Maybe not next year, but maybe in the future. It could be a long-term vision also. Let's say that Pinarello sticks with Ineos for 2025, and 2026 they move to Q36.5. It's the same owner, so why not? And Pidcock riding the mountain bikes. Anyway, if he's on Q36.5, he would be riding a Scott mountain bike. That's also, obviously, there's a lot of resources in the mountain bike with the Scott team. Schurter's on Scott. He's going to retire after next season, I guess. So it's all connected. And Pidcock is obviously a super interesting figure for all those brands.
Yeah. A couple things there. So Q36.5 makes a lot of sense, if only because Scott's a good brand for Tom Pidcock. That's a very quality bike across all disciplines. As you say, Nino Schurter, he's had a little bit of success on Scott. I think Pidcock would do all right. The only thing and I think the team needs him. I mean, what's the identity of that team? It's just, they're just kind of there. And the thing is, our product is actually really good. Like, if you look at some of this Q36.5 stuff up close, and I'm not just trying to get him to send me Q36.5 clothing, but it is quite impressive. They have a lot there to advertise. But right now, this is the rankings of second division teams: Lotto, Israel, Uno X. So that's the three teams with auto invites to World Tour one-day races. The top two, Lotto, Israel, going to Grand Tours. Or they get an invite. They don't have to go. Then below that, fourth, Tudor. Fifth, Total Energy. Sixth, Kahu Rual. Seventh, Q36.5. So to have someone come in and score points and bring like a personality and give some shape to that brand is incredibly important for them. Let's just say he goes there. Okay, before we do that, I don't think Red Bull makes a lot of sense, other than the fact that he's currently sponsored by Red Bull. Like, why is he leaving Ineos? Because he's hard to deal with, and he wants to do his own thing, and he has his own entourage, and he doesn't want to work in Grand Tours. How does that work at Red Bull? They've got a lot of good riders there, a lot of things they want to do outside of Pidcock. I think Astana would work in that respect. I don't know if he would.
Yeah, I think Q36.5 in a way, especially after reading his comments, he said that he wants to focus on classics and one-day races mainly. He's not that hungry for Grand Tours. He said he was going to go for the Grand Tours because they made him say it in Ineos, his own words. So Red Bull, for his type of ambitions, would make sense because he can do a lot in one-day races for Red Bull.
But that's a lot of money to pay someone that doesn't race Grand Tours.
Yeah, I know, Spencer, but listen, we're talking about Red Bull, man. They have money. It's like it's the same for Radcliffe. It's the same for Q36.5. If you look at the financial resources of the owner, not makes not so much sense for the brand, but still, it's not $1 million or $2 million more or less that these guys they're not gonna lose any sleep over it, you know. So,
but I guess to push back on that, isn't Ineos losing sleep over it? Isn't that the whole reason why?
Yeah, but
I don't fully understand that.
It's not because they can't afford it. It's because Radcliffe is fed up with the cycling team and spending the money. If he wants, he can. I mean, the guy has very deep pockets. Radcliffe, right? I think he's the second richest guy in the UK. It's not.
Yeah, he's in cost cutting mode for reasons I don't fully understand, but like they're cutting costs across that entire portfolio. Astana, would he ride? I think Astana sporting in a sporting sense actually would make a lot of sense because he could do whatever he wanted.
Again, Spencer, I would, if Tom Pidcock is listening to me or anybody of his entourage, I know that some of these people listen to the podcast. Do not go to Astana. It's not the right environment for you. It's not, it can be a lot of money, but and maybe in the future it changes with the Chinese backers now. But as long as it's this management currently, it's not good. It's not good. Don't go there.
What do you want? Yeah, that is a weird team. I mean, even outside of the issues that you've had with them, if you remember, remember when Yana Seal was this where it was like a battle between her and Vinokurov, and then they brought in Lopez again after he left. But would he want to ride XDS, the bike? That seems like a big swing. He has a lot riding on like those mountain bike, the quality of the mountain bikes. I mean, road bikes are so easy to kind of get right now. I don't know if he would be willing to do that.
I mean, I think this company has a lot of resources, and it would not be an issue. They can make the bike they want, and they can make the bike he wants. When the first, I think the first time when Pinarello didn't have a mountain bike yet, Pidcock was riding on a neutral bike, on a different bike. He was riding a BMC.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
That would guess that's always an option. But let's say he goes to Q36.5, which I think makes sense if you start to form your mind around certain realities. But what does his schedule look like? Because they're not guaranteed. They'd be floating off wild cards, which I guess they'd have a better chance at if they had Tom Pidcock. Possible they don't get invited to a single Grand Tour, but does Tom Pidcock care about that? I mean, that's actually where this starts to make sense. I mean, the lighter the road schedule for him, not necessarily negative, because then he can focus on mountain bike more.
Yeah. I don't know, man. I mean, after hearing his interviews, he wants to focus on classics. The classics that are good for him, meaning Liège, Amstel, Flèche Wallonne, maybe Milan-San Remo. They'll get an invite if Pidcock's at the start. They will get an invite. I mean, I think most of those classics, they already got an invite, but with Pidcock, they get an invite for sure.
Yeah. I'm looking now. They're actually at a lot of races and you didn't notice them. Like they were at the Tour of Flanders, Tour of Romandy, Tour of Switzerland, Milano Torino. Yeah, I guess they, as you said, they can invite 25 teams to one-day races. So yeah, if they have Tom Pidcock, they're probably getting invited to any one day they want. Only Grand Tour I could imagine is Giro, which I was talking about the Giro potentially losing 7 million euros. I mean, you don't have to confirm or deny this, but I heard that sometimes the Giro wildcard slots can be up for sale, so to speak, if you make a nice little donation.
Everything is for sale in Italy. We could make a really nice podcast about some anecdotes I have from from that time.
Yeah, so that could be
different director then, but it's still the same company, RCS. So, yeah.
And I mean, you're not just making stuff up. You do see some invitations that seem like they were purchased.
Yeah, for sure.
So that's always an option for them. If they have the money, you throw some euros at the Giro. You're in the Giro. Probably would be a good race for Tom Pidcock to stage hunt in. I don't know if are there. I'm just trying to think of examples. Are there great one-day riders who just don't race Grand Tours at all? Like Mathieu van der Poel, kind of, but he is out there racing. He's just not focusing on them. Maybe like Benoit Cosnefroy or something. But
yeah, there are. I mean, you don't need to specifically race a Grand Tour to be good in the classics races. You can, it's possible. I think if Pidcock goes to Q36.5, I can see them in the Giro.
I could see that too. And maybe that's what Tom Pidcock wants. Do we know if he's racing mountain bike next year? I know there's
he wants to. That's his favorite discipline.
And it's unclear if he's racing cross this year. I'd assume that, I don't know, maybe that's a decision he's making from a sporting perspective, just wanting to relax. But if his team situation's up in the air, maybe that makes it harder. We do know that his coach, Kurt Bogarts, it's a little bit of an odd situation. It's his personal coach, but he's also an employee of Ineos, the team. He's not at training camp right now, Ineos training camp. So that would suggest that he's going with Pidcock to wherever he signs.
Kurt Bogarts is definitely going where Pidcock goes. There's no doubt about that.
So if I had to guess, I'd say Q36.5. But as you say, there could always be an Astana, just like an Astana late bid that's super high.
It's going to be interesting, Spencer. I think we're going to. I think they're kind of waiting a little bit. It's already decided where he's going to go, in my opinion. And that's basically also because I think there's the agreement had to be made with the new team and Ineos. Ineos has agreed to a certain amount that they're going to pay on top of what this new team is going to pay. So I've read somewhere that in the month of December, Pidcock will do some races, some cyclocross races. So it's not impossible to imagine that he's going to show up at his first cyclocross in the colors of his new team.
That would be quite the announcement. So let's just say he goes to Q36.5. One question I have, who's working for him at these classics? Or is he just counting on freelancing, like using his bike handling skill? Because it's not a particularly strong classic squad.
And again, let's not forget, Pidcock is still young. So I think the fact if Pidcock goes to Q36.5, this is a longer vision. And so they're going to start to recruit next year already in function of him being a number of years on the team. So it's not a super strong team, but I think he'll have the necessary support. Most of the races that Pidcock can focus on, it's also not races that his team will have to carry the weight of the race. There's going to be other riders. There's going to be Pogačar. There's going to be Remco. There's going to be other teams who carry the weight, and he can kind of surf the favorites and then try to take advantage of it. In that case, you just need one or two guys with you, but not even to set a tempo, but just to stay around you and bring you in position. And they have plenty of guys who can do that.
Yeah. I'd be curious to see. I guess it's kind of, like remember Carlos Sastro went to the Cervelo test team, and I mean, he had some success, I guess. Maybe that's a bad example, but we've seen it happen. Big riders Peter Sagan went to Bora when they were a tiny team, and he built that team, and he had great years there. So it's not impossible. I am curious to see what ends up happening here, and I wouldn't be shocked if they're on Pinarello's next year. I assume they have some sort of deal with Ineos that they have to see out.
I think that's more difficult, Spencer. It's late in the season.
Oh no, see them on 2026 because they have to finish their contract with Ineos.
That could be an option. Yeah.
Well, we have a few listener questions. If you want them read, email them to info@wedo.team. We are getting a lot, so I'm having to pick through them. I cannot guarantee you that I will read them, but just two easy ones this week, Johan. A few weeks ago, we talked about Tadej Pogačar's new contract. I believe it was 50 million euros over 6 years with a 200 million buyout clause. Dan emails in, should Tadej have gotten more money based on his buyout clause? It seems disproportionate. 50 million euro contract versus 2 million euro buyout. Can you explain the thought process behind this?
Yeah, no, the buyout is ridiculous. 200 million. I mean, that's like, okay, well, it makes no sense. But at the same time, it's a guarantee. They're kind of putting a value on the team, right? Because if Pogačar would say, okay, I'm out, and somebody, whatever. I mean, let's say the Saudis come with a project for a team and they buy Pogačar. They're basically buying the whole team. That's the 200 million. But it's to put a number on there to make sure that he doesn't get any other thoughts. At the same time, at that kind of salary, there's nobody right now who can afford that unless it's somewhere like Chinese or Saudis who come with a new project. I don't see that happening. But the buyout clause is definitely not in proportion to the salary.
I guess on purpose, though, right? Because they're trying to protect themselves from a Maxime Van Hill situation. So what if XDS just said 50 million? Because we talked about in the EU, it seems like you can just pay the amount of the contract, and then you have the rider. Someone might pay 50 million. Probably won't pay 200 million.
We've seen what kind of contract it is, right? Is it a UAE contract? Is it an Italian contract? Is it a Slovenian contract? And then you have the law of that country that the contract is based upon. So the contract of Van Gils, it's because it's a Belgian contract, and the law in Belgium is constructed that way. I don't know. I'm not a specialist enough, or I don't have the necessary information. But I don't think that all the countries are the same.
If a listener deals, and I actually would like to know, do teams try to do contracts in certain countries that are more favorable to the teams? How would that, if that went to court, how would that be argued? Is it where Pogačar lives, where the team's based? Essentially, I think it's just playing it safe. Like, they know that they don't want to lose him, and he's not going to look at that. The question you're asking yourself is, Pogačar going to look at that buyout and say that's too high? They should have said $1 billion. The number could be anything as long as Pogačar is happy with the amount he's getting paid. You're just protecting yourself from like a potential legal battle.
Exactly. But normally the contracts are subject to the country where the paying agent is based. So in this case, I'm not sure if it's UAE or it might actually be Switzerland, because
it could be Swiss.
It could be Mauro Gianetti's own company who's managing the UAE team. I'm not sure about that. Although I'm gonna say it's UAE law. So basically, you don't decide anything; it's them who decide.
Yeah. Huh. I'm quite curious about this. Yeah, I'm going to try to figure out where their paying agent is, and I assume it's probably easier to have it in Switzerland versus UAE, but I don't know. There's a whole world here we need to learn more about. Yeah. But so, question number 2, then we'll take off. But there's a bit of an understatement from Tim in Virginia. Pogačar's season is what it is. Spencer note right here. You could say it's the best season of all time. That is what it is. But going back to the question, everyone forgets that Jonas was riding at a high level early in the season. He easily won at Gran Camino and Tirreno Adriatico. He was up there in the Basque Country before the crash. Taking away the crash and injuries, he would have come into the Tour primed. With a healthy Wout and Sepp, the Tour might have looked a little different. It woulda, coulda, but if Jonas defends the Tour, does that take some of the shine off Tadej's season? And are we talking about Jonas's great season? I picked this question because I do think it's interesting. if Pogačar has the season he has, like one of the best of all time, let's say he still has, let's say he's 24 wins instead of 25, doesn't win the Tour. Jonas wins the Tour for the third year in a row. Pogačar loses the Tour for the third year in a row. Obviously that's a successful season, but yeah, that does change it fundamentally. Like, would we think about it as this great season?
No.
It'd be technically a failure, I guess, because he failed.
The Tour. I mean, the Tour is so much above everything else. And especially for those guys who have reached that level of having won the Tour now, Pogačar 3 times, Jonas 2 times, anything but winning the Tour is not a success. From now, these guys, they have to win the Tour, otherwise it's not a successful season. So even if Pogačar would have won all the races but lost the Tour, we would have said, but he didn't win the Tour, so he's done for the Tour. And that's the disadvantage of the importance of the Tour de France. It's a monster compared to any other race. It overshadows everything. And so now, of course, Pogačar's season has been amazing, the best ever, I agree, in history of cycling, especially also the way he won all those races, right? But yeah, take the Tour away and you're talking, he's amazing. He's number one. He would still be number one in the rankings, but he didn't win the Tour. And it's the third time in a row he doesn't win the Tour, so he can't win the Tour anymore. That would be the reasoning behind it.
That's exactly what we would be saying, that he cannot win the Tour anymore. He shouldn't even try. He should give up. It's quite an interesting hypothetical because obviously the crash happened. You can't change it. But I don't know. Maybe Pogačar would have won anyway. He might have been unbeatable on the form he was on this season, but Vingegaard looked so good, even having had that disruption, that I don't think it's a slam dunk. I do think it's a close race. If
honestly, Spencer, I don't. This Pogačar would not have lost the Tour de France, even against Jonas, without the crash. It's amazing how good Jonas was after this accident, but the numbers speak for themselves. He himself and his trainer or his team director has said, this is the best performance ever of Jonas Vingegaard on Plateau de Bay, for example, and in some other mountain stages. He did fade away a little bit in the last week, but he didn't have the necessary base, and probably also mentally he had accepted his defeat. So, but it would have been closer, but Tadej would have won the Tour, even with Jonas with a perfect season, in my opinion. This was a different level.
We didn't get talked about because it was such a blowout. Kind of an interesting dynamic of that Tour is the last 10K of the race were a technical downhill in Pogačar's backyard, basically. And I mean, it could be that Jonas was just playing it safe, but he lost a ton of time on that descent. It's kind of interesting to think, if the race is close, is that what makes the difference? Like the descent down into Nice from Col d'Ez, that Pogačar definitely knows better than Vingegaard, but unfortunately didn't really get to.
I mean, it's also, I mean, downhill is also very, very subjective. It depends on which zone you're in. I remember 2023, Tadej was not that good in the downhills. Jonas was a lot better in the downhills on certain mountain stages. Tadej also had lost a bit of confidence, I think, with the crash in Liège. Same happened with Jonas. But I don't think they're that different. They're both great bike handlers. Little advantage, in my opinion, for Pogačar. He's more of an artist on the bike. Jonas is more like, okay, he handled the bike well, goes downhill sometimes really well, but doesn't seem like he is so, how do you call, like an artist on the bike, right? So Pogačar does everything more like, it's more like natural. But I don't think there's not a huge difference there in the downhills. If you look at the downhill, Jonas did in the time trial he won in Salange. That was pretty impressive, that downhill. And And let's not forget the year before when in the last time trial that basically he slowed down to let Wout win the time trial. He went down there also really, really fast, almost missed the turn, but kept it upright. So he's good in the downhills, Jonas also.
He has like certain moods where he flies downhill. And you think, dude, I think it was at Gran Camino this year. It's like wet descents, and he was going so fast, like so fast. Like he can't turn it off. It's just like some internal motor there. Obviously, it's the same thing as Pogačar, as you said the year before. Like not quite the same on the downhills, probably because of lost confidence and then zone issues. But that's all we have for this week. Johan, do you want to add anything before we take off?
No, that's it. Just stay tuned for our next show, Trades and Transfers. It's going to be in a couple of weeks, but we're going to announce the day pretty soon. It's going to be Lance and George and I to talk about the major transfers. Obviously, we're going to talk about Pidcock quite a bit. Hopefully, by then we'll know his destination. But we'll give an overview of all the important changes in team structures on our next show.
Yeah, hopefully we know. I have a feeling we'll know where he's going by then.
We will know. We will know for sure.
Well, thanks, Johan, and we will talk next week for our weekly show.
Thanks.
Bye.